On this vote, the ayes are 232, the nays are 197. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
Tonight, he's been impeached. Again, Donald Trump becomes the first US president to be impeached twice, all over his role in last week's Capitol siege. But what will this mean with his time in office running out fast? Special team coverage just moments away. Also tonight, thousands of pro-Trump armed extremists plotting to surround the US Capitol ahead of Joe Biden's inauguration. That's according to one member of Congress on CNN, as security concerns continue to grow. Calls for the president-elect to be behind bulletproof glass, while others say it should be called off altogether. Details coming up shortly. And later we have breaking news here at home with changes about to come into effect around Victoria surrounding the state's mask policies. Our reporter will have all the details coming up. And good evening, welcome to 6 News on this very busy Sunday evening. We have a lot to get through very shortly, but first we begin with some other breaking news overseas, and there are concerns about possible armed protests at the US Capitol that could begin in just a few hours. Here's what we know right now. The FBI said in an internal bulletin that the protests, similar to what you have seen in that vision there, could begin January 17th, that is today of course, and all the way up till January the 20th, which of course is when Joe Biden will be inaugurated. There could also be armed protests at all 50 state capitals with the National Guard on standby as we go to air. I want to bring in now former US Senator Donald Betts, live for us in Melbourne tonight. Good evening to you. These armed protests are really worrying for authorities. Given what we already saw last week, what's your reaction to all this?
The FBI in this, because of what's happened at the Capitol, everything has to be, the public wants to know. It's a government for the people, by the people. The people need to know what is happening, what could potentially put me and my family in harm. What do I need to do to stay advised as to the goings on in America? So the FBI technically is doing their job. They're looking at feeds that may be on internet websites, and they're following those leads, and they're communicating that to the public, which is important in this with the mix of things and how tensions have risen from day to day after the impeachment and so on and so forth. So this is good that the American people are being well informed.
Yeah, authorities definitely concerned about this. Now, the president's impeachment, I don't think I can interview you without going through this huge story. Do you believe it's a necessary move, and what are your thoughts on those 10 House Republicans who voted for it?
Well, when I swore to serve the people of the great state of Kansas, I swore an oath to honor the Constitution. And that Constitution has been the document that has given America breadth. So our duty is to protect the Constitution of our states' legislatures and our federal legislature. There are legislators in Congress that feel that that Constitution, the sworn oath, has been breached. And if there are a number of representatives enough to pass an impeachment because they all strongly feel that there's been a breach of the honoring of our Constitution, well, I think they have every right within their power to do so. And as it relates to those 10 Republicans, for the same reason, their understanding of the rule of law and the things that took place at our federal Capitol may be a little stronger. Maybe they're a little bit more courageous to investigate. So an impeachment is an indictment. It's a charge. It's just like jaywalking, and you walk across the street, you've been charged with a crime. Well, now you have to go to court and, give your side of the spiel. You would think that this would be normal in the case that if a sitting president was to incite violence on our federal Capitol, in whatever way that looks, or however you can paint it, whether it be by the First Amendment rights or whatever that may be, the Congress has a right to investigate. And that's what this impeachment allows the people that voice. It gives the people that voice, because the scenes that we saw, even sitting here in Australia, were atrocious. You would never think the terrorist attack will happen in our federal capital, with buildings broken, windows broken, and Congress hiding under their chairs. That's an assault on our democracy. So of course, heads have to roll, and normally the fish head rots at the top. So it would only be fitting for Congress to go to the top and investigate.
Yeah, the president would certainly not be happy with those Republicans actually voting against him. Just before we go tonight, there are calls for Joe Biden, the president-elect, to be behind bulletproof glass for his inauguration, others saying it should be held inside, while some have called for it to be held off together. Would you support any of those measures?
I'll let the next president of the United States make that decision. The 46th president of the United States, that's his decision to make. He is the commander-in-chief. So if he decides he wants to walk down the street in a bulletproof vest and bulletproof glass, then so be it. He is the commander-in-chief. He makes the decision at the end of the day.
All right, certainly a lot to talk about tonight. Donald Betts, really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Alright, well, of course, Donald Trump has become the first US president in history to be impeached twice. The article which you saw in the House of Representatives charges him with incitement of insurrection over his role in the violent attack on the US Capitol in Washington, D.C. last week. But how will this affect the outgoing president with just a few days in office for him remaining, and how will this affect the next administration? Chief Reporter Connor Forke explains.
The dawn of a new era at the White House. Moving day begins as the Biden banners go up, heralding the impending transition of power. For some, the inauguration on January 20th couldn't come fast enough.
He must go. He is a clear and present danger to the nation that we all love.
Donald Trump is the most dangerous man to ever occupy the Oval Office.
Donald Trump, the only US president ever to be impeached twice, let alone in the space of 13 months.
It's a very sad time in the history of our country.
Trump was first impeached in December 2019 for alleged abuse of power and obstruction of Congress for his attempt to pressure Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden's family. This is his second. A 4-page article of impeachment charges the president with incitement of insurrection, labeling him a threat to national security, democracy, and the Constitution. They claim he incited the mob attack on Capitol Hill, which killed 5 people, including 1 police officer.
A vote to impeach would further divide this nation.
This is only the 4th impeachment in US history. Donald Trump in 2019, Bill Clinton in 1998, Andrew Johnson in 1868, except none passed the Senate, meaning they were not removed from office or barred from returning. The earliest date that the Senate will return to session to vote on Trump's impeachment is the 19th or 20th. They'll vote once for conviction and removal, and a second time on whether to ban him from running in 2024. If 2/3 of senators vote to remove the president, he won't be able to return to office. But assuming that all Democrats will vote to impeach Trump, 17 Republicans will have to break ranks. 10 did in the House.
I am not choosing a side, I'm choosing truth. It's the only way to defeat fear.
Sources have reportedly told CNN
President Trump is angry and isolated after making history as the first U.S. president to be impeached twice.
Donald Trump sticking to script condemning the Capitol Hill riots, but notably no mention of his role in fomenting the riots or his impeachment.
Mob violence goes against everything I believe in and everything our movement stands for. No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence.
His 4 years in office have been undeniably unconventional, controversial, and record-breaking. Donald Trump is the most prolific tweeter to ever hold office. He held the most expensive inauguration and is the oldest US president before Biden. but it's the events of the past fortnight that will forever mire him in ignominy. Connor Alforge, 6 News.
I want to return to breaking news now. I want to bring you up to speed. There are serious concerns about violent attacks at the US Capitol as well as at all 50 state capitals. There's a live shot of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Americans waking up for you this morning. It's very early in the morning there. It's much quieter than what we saw a few days ago with the Capitol siege. But right now, the National Guard is on standby for possible armed violence, and our US correspondent Jackson Gosnell filed this report.
Well, Leo, we're monitoring many stories here in the United States, beginning with Biden's inauguration. President-elect Joe Biden will be taking over the White House and will be sworn in on January 20th. Now, President Trump is really upset about that, but that goes without saying that. And we're learning more about preparations for Biden's inauguration. That is because there are expects of widespread attacks at the U.S. Capitol. That is where Biden will be sworn in at. You may recall about a week ago, there were attacks from a pro-Trump mob at the Capitol building. Now, President Trump did say that the violence was not needed. He condemned any violence that occurred, but there are worries that there are preparations underway across many social media apps to kind of storm Biden's inauguration, and that's why there are now more troops outside the Capitol and in the D.C. area than in Iraq and Afghanistan. So there are thousands of people preparing for what could be violence. We're hoping not, but we are going to be prepared here in the United States. We do know that some lawmakers are fearful that protesters could attack their homes, some even purchasing bulletproof vests before Biden's inauguration. President Trump has said he will not attend that event. However, it's reported that his daughter Ivanka may attend, and we do know that Vice President Mike Pence will also be in attendance. I will continue to monitor the very latest for you from right here in the U.S. I'm Jackson Gosnell. Back to you.
And with the inauguration of Joe Biden just days away, here's where and when you can watch our coverage. It kicks off very early in the morning on January the 21st. That's at 4 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, 1 a.m. if you're in Western Australia, but 12 p.m. on January the 20th if you're on America's East Coast. So again, it's Thursday morning, Melbourne, Australia time, a Wednesday afternoon in the US. And of course, you can watch the live coverage by following us on Instagram, 6NewsAU, at 6NewsAU, and we'll also have special coverage on our YouTube channel as well. So make sure you subscribe right now. Well, in more breaking news tonight, changes to Victoria's mask rules are about to come into effect. It's all part of the return to the office, with Daniel Andrews saying that it's a positive step forward. Senior reporter Darby Travers has the details.
Daniel Andrews has announced the easing of restrictions surrounding mask wearing in Victoria from 11:59 p.m. tonight as thousands of workers return to the office in Melbourne CBD. The Premier has revealed that private businesses will be permitted to have their staff return to the office at 50% capacity, while the public sector will be able to return at 25%. The return to work had been delayed by Sydney's COVID-19 cluster, as well as the BlackRock outbreak, but has now been given the green light to go ahead. Mask wearing will revert back to the rules that were in place before Christmas, only mandatory in high-risk indoor settings such as supermarkets, shopping centres, hospitals, domestic flights, Ubers, taxis and public transport. It comes as both Victoria introduced new lockdown rules for travellers arriving from a Brisbane quarantine hotel, with anyone who has already completed 14 days of quarantine at the Grand Chancellor since December 30 now ordered to self-isolate and get tested immediately, after at least 6 cases of the highly infectious UK strain were discovered in the building. And you can find more coronavirus coverage on our social media pages. All you need to do, just search 6NewsAU to find us.
Well, returning now to the US, and a Black Lives Matter activist has been arrested in connection with those Capitol riots last week. But here's what you're not hearing. Rebellion Baby, which describes itself as providing resources for the revolution, actually claimed back on Twitter in November that the man who was arrested, John Sullivan, actually has ties to the far right. They claim that John's brother James is the co-founder of a pro-Trump organisation called Civilized Awakening, and even has strong ties to the Proud Boys, even having spoken at a Proud Boys rally, apparently. The group saying he is likely an infiltrator or provocateur, John Sullivan that is, attempting to insert himself into the protest community in Seattle. That is their words, not mine. I want to stress that, and we are working to independently verify all those claims. Again, John Sullivan was the man who was arrested in connection with the Capitol riots. The headline was that he was an activist, a Black Lives Matter activist, but really interesting to hear what this group, Rebellion Baby, is saying, and what they did say back in November, way before the Capitol riot. So we will continue to update you on this story as we get more information. Well, nearly 1 year after a helicopter crash killed NBA legend Kobe Bryant, the NTSB said that there will be a hearing in early February to determine a probable cause of the crash. Documents made public last year somewhat supported the growing theory that the pilot, Ara Zobian, may have become disoriented while navigating through the fog. According to those documents, the pilot's last communication with air traffic controllers before the crash was an indication that he was climbing to 4,000 feet above the cloud cover, but flight data indicates that the helicopter was actually descending at the same time while banking to the left, ultimately slamming into a hillside in Calabasas. Along with Bryant, 8 other people were killed in that helicopter crash, including his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. And it really makes you think, at the start of 2020, other than the bushfires here at home, you would have thought it couldn't get any worse. The year couldn't get any worse, and that story was really dominating the news. Again, that hearing is scheduled for early February. And that is 6 News for this Sunday evening. A lot of breaking news tonight. Remember, you can see more breaking news by simply following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Just search 6 News A to find us. We'll leave you now with live pictures that we showed you a little earlier of the US Capitol in Washington, D.C. For now, though, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.